Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Shaun. I'm a master fitness trainer. I'm obviously a public speaker. I'm a CU provider to other fitness professionals, which means they read a book and they get some credits taking my course. But most importantly, I'm my authentic self. And that's what I want for everybody in this room, to be their authentic selves. So how does everybody become their authentic selves? Well, it's truly the hardest work there is, but I believe that authenticity always starts with vulnerability. So I'd like to tell you guys a little story about myself, and everyone's meeting me for the first time. I am 47 years old, but when I was 11 years old, I was in camp, and I was born with club feet, and so was Tom Brady, so I'm in good company. But this was 11 years old, and it's kickball, and there's lots of kids to my left, and there's lots of kids to my right, and I'm ready. And the counselor, to his credit at the time, he rolls the ball very slowly, and I'm ready. This is my moment. And in that moment, as the ball got closer to me, I missed it entirely, and I fell on my back. And everybody laughed, all the kids, including the counselor, including the other counselors. And then the counselor who threw the ball at me said, "What a loser!" And all the kids laughed harder. So in that moment, I picked myself up, again, club feet, overweight at the time, 11 years old. I said everybody laughed, but one person didn't laugh, which was my brother. My brother puts his arm around me, and I sit on the bench. And that was a defining moment for myself because my life could have gone one or two ways. Could have gone where I never do anything physical again. And that's it. Had my moment. It was horrible, super traumatic. We all could agree. And that's it. Or I could do something entirely different and surpass even my own expectations. Where, like I said, I'm a master trainer. This is my 9th event. I've been on stage with celebrities like Tony Robbins. I am proud to say I've written 3 books, contributed to many others, written countless of articles. I have the most successful push-up book all time. I have the most shared push-up challenge all time of over 60,000. But I can't even kick a ball at 11 years old. Can't even kick a ball. So how does one go from that traumatic moment to their authentic self? So as I wrote this book during COVID, the heart of COVID, it was already in play. All of the emotions that were inside of me became very subconscious. They become very cellular because that's what emotions are. So everybody here is clearly an adult, but certain things that happen to everybody in their childhood lives in their body. It lives deep in their subconscious. And you make most of your decisions, if not all of them, in the subconscious. Everybody made a decision to come to see me today, and I'm so thankful you guys did. But that's based upon your subconscious. It's not really a conscious decision. Okay? So this is emotional fitness. So what is emotional fitness? For those of you who haven't read my book, I'll simplify it. Emotional fitness is empowering yourself through exercise, right? So what that means is we've all had some sort of trauma, I believe, in our life. We've all had some sort of anxiety. We've all had some sort of depression. We've all had some sort of pain. We've all had some sort of stress. Maybe it's not chronic, but everyone knows it's the human element. It binds us all together. Everyone here in this room has had a bad day. Everyone in this room is an adult. Everyone in this room, I'm sure, has responsibilities. All that can, again, bring anxiety, depression, stress, and trauma. Let's talk about anxiety very briefly, right? Anxiety, if you've ever experienced it, can be very painful, right? It tricks you to thinking that, again, you're going to have a bad day. It tricks you to thinking that, again, things are not necessarily real. These fears that we have inside of us, right? If I go into this presentation and think, oh my God, I think I'm a good public speaker. I think I'm so much charming. But if I go into this presentation with fear and anxiety, well, then I'm going to what? I'm going to come across fearful. That anxiety is going to become real. So anxiety is just really a distraction. It's not real. One of the things I'll have a lot of my clients and my patients do is I'll say, what are you anxious about today? And if, let's say I see somebody in the morning and they're saying, oh, Shaun, I'm really anxious. I'm gonna have to give a presentation for all these people. And I'm afraid I'm gonna do really poorly. And I'll say, okay, let's take a straight line. Let's take a piece of paper. Let's draw a straight line. On the left side of that piece of paper, you're gonna write down everything that you're fearful of, right? Everything that really causes fear. And on the other side, on the right side, you're gonna write down, did it actually happen? And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. So you think about, again, the fears that we have, they're all lies. And yet anxiety is lie. Anxiety is also a big distraction. It doesn't get to the root. So I mentioned that kickball story when I was a kid. The counselor called me a loser. Everyone laughed at me. that is just a distraction. If I stay in that sort of chronic state of anxiety, if I stay in that state of, oh my goodness, like I can never perform in front of people again, or if I do, the same thing will happen. That's just my nervous system, that's my vagus nerve stuck. And again, it's just not real. And then depression is the opposite of that. Depression is, I'm afraid to feel. A lot of people are afraid to feel. So again, what do? Well, they mask it with substance. I don't say that lightly. Or they depress it. They ignore it. They try to push it down. That doesn't get to the root either, right? So all this talking is so important. And let's say you're having a bad day. You tell a girlfriend, you tell a friend, you tell a spouse. All that's really important. But at the end of the day, it doesn't get it out of your body. It's still in your body because, again, it's based upon the subconscious. So how do we get it out of our body, right? Again, especially if you're having some anxiety, some depression, some stress, some trauma, which we'll get to in a moment. These are the master mantras. These are the sages in emotional fitness. So what would happen is about 2017, I would see my therapist. I used to live in Brooklyn, and we'd have this session, and it would be, again, kind of intense. And I would think about everything she said, and I would walk to the gym. And I was working out at this gym that nobody knew who I was, which is great. So it was like really undercover. Obviously, I saw clients and patients somewhere else, but this was a place where I could just sort of like really sink my teeth into everything that my therapist was saying at the time. And I would, sort of think about what she said. I would write these little notes to myself. And that gave birth to these master mantras. And I feel like everyone in this room can identify with them to some degree. So the first one is embracing your inner work to accept your path. So I'll bring up the kickball story again just for a moment because that was a real defining part of my life, as you guys know. I had to accept that that happened. I don't really remember the counselor's name. I swear to God, I don't. All I remember is he called me a loser and everyone laughed, but I don't really remember his name. And I had visions of myself as I like put on more muscle and I would walk down the street in Brooklyn. It's like, oh, I hope I run into him. He's going to see me now. And I'm going to be like, oh, who's a loser now, man? I had all these visions I was playing out in my head that was very therapeutic, but again, didn't heal me. It wasn't really healing because I was really attached to that anger. Right? It didn't really give me peace. So I had to accept that it happened. Bad things happen all the time to innocent people. It is a really horrible thing about life, right? So we have to accept it. It's really difficult. But if you can do that, that is the first step. That is the first step into, again, healing and creating your emotional freedom. The second master mantra is believing that you are worthy. So I talk about worthiness a lot. I have two little girls, they're 6 and 8, and I make it a point when I tuck them in at night and we tell a story, we play all these games, I'll say to them, you're going to repeat these 3 things to me. And we've been doing it now for years. And they're like, oh, Daddy, I know. Okay, I say, but no, we're going to do this. The first thing I say is, please tell me you're awesome. And they say, I'm awesome. I say, please tell me that you are worthy of everything. And they'll say, I'm worthy of everything. And then I'll say, please tell me that you can do anything. And the reason why I have them say those things is because if I don't, somebody else is going to tell them something else. Somebody else will create a different belief system for them because they're 6 and 8. They're run by emotion. Their prefrontal cortex isn't going to be formed until they're 27. So you can tell anything to a child and they're going to believe it. So I mentioned myself again. It wasn't the last time I was called a loser, by the way, then, when I couldn't do anything physical. So I had to rewire my brain. I'm not a loser because I can't kick a ball. They're wrong. But if I start believing that, which I hate to say I did a little bit, then my path changes. My worthiness changes. We're all born being worthy. But if we start listening to outside sources, that takes away from, again, our worthiness. And everybody here may have an experience with a parent, counselor, teacher. They might have said something that was unfavorable. That's their belief system. Who are you when you're not defined by, again, the people that raised you? Or who are you when you're not defined by that teacher, that counselor? Right? So it's really important to think about, again, who you are based upon your own beliefs, not by what somebody has told you. The third master mantra is knowing that you are empowered. Everybody in this room is empowered. And if you've been hurt by somebody, right, we've all been hurt by somebody. We all can say that, whether it was really extreme or not. What do we want? Sometimes we want revenge. I hate to say it, but sometimes we want an apology, right? Where we want that person to fix it, right? So let's say you had a bad experience with a parent, counselor, teacher, hence my counselor. I want him to fix it. You called me a loser. You embarrassed me in front of everybody. Fix it. It's not his job to. It's my job to. Now I have to take responsibility and heal myself, right? That's hard, hard work. But when you do that, that's your freedom. And most of the time, the person that hurt you, hate to say it, spoiler alert, They can't heal you. They can't. The fourth master mantra is lowering the volume. So my aunt died 2 years ago. She was like a surrogate mom to me in a lot of ways. And she died unexpectedly. She was 83. I remember I got the call, and she lived in the city, and I was nervous for her, and she lived alone. And a police officer called my cell phone on her cell phone. And even though my aunt had a cell phone, she wasn't really tech savvy. So my heart sank. She calls, and I pick up the phone. I'm like, "Hi, Nancy." She never wanted me to call her Aunt Nancy. Always wanted me to call her Nancy. And the police officer told me what happened, that she died in her sleep. And it was really terrible. But in that moment, I remember that she bought me a boom box when I was 11 years old, during a lot of time that I had excessive trauma. And I remember the boom box, and I remember like turning it on, and I remember like, oh, it was like so loud, and it hurt my ear. It was like one of those very big boom box from the 80s, if we all remember. And I remember it really hurt my ear. And that's how what I think about trauma, right? Trauma doesn't have to be the worst thing, by the way, that ever happened to somebody. We all can think about the most terrible thing in the world. That doesn't really have to be, again, the only definition of trauma. Trauma could be, let's say you had a mom or dad and they ignored you. That's trauma. If you didn't get an emotional response as a child from something, that's trauma. So trauma doesn't have to be, oh my God, the worst thing imaginable. But then the trauma responses we all have as adults look like people pleasing. Some of you may know, some of you may be a people pleaser. That's trauma. Some of you may be an overworker, an overthinker. That's trauma. Some of you may not be able to take a compliment. That's trauma. All of these, again, are trauma responses that become unhealed. Okay, so the horrible part about trauma, and I don't mean to be negative when I say this because I like to think of myself as a positive guy, you never heal yourself from trauma. You just get really good at lowering the volume. So with all the work that I've done and writing these books and giving these speeches and lectures, now again, sometimes I still get triggered, which we can talk about that in a moment, but it's at a 1 or a 2. It's a slight little annoying buzz instead of a very loud noise. Master mantra number 5 is being your biggest fan. It's really important to love yourself unconditionally. What a concept, right? Oh my God. I'm sure if some of you are parents here, I'm sure you love your kids, hopefully unconditionally, but what about when it comes to you? If people, I like to make this joke, this is the 9th time I've done this today, and I like to make this joke, and usually goes over really well, so hopefully it does today. But if people could get inside of your head, right, would you have any friends? I mean, really, and let's break it down. Let's say I drop my water bottle. I'm like, oh, stupid Shaun. No, that's a horrible way to treat yourself. You would never treat your kid that way. Certainly you'd have compassion. So it's really important to have compassion, empathy with yourself. Okay? These are the master mantras. These are the sages of emotional fitness. So before we get into the physical, these are the building blocks. So I'd like everybody to close their eyes for a moment and humor me, please, and think about the master mantras that I just went over. Is there one particular master mantra that really speaks to you? Is it embracing your inner work to accept your path? Is it believing that you are worthy? Is it knowing that you are empowered? How about lowering the volume? And last but not least, being your biggest fan. Please take a moment of silence to think about these mantras and how they could apply to you, but maybe even apply to somebody that you know. All right, everyone can open their eyes. See that? You guys are doing a great job. There's going to be a quiz. I'm just letting everybody know. There's going to be a quiz. Now we have the emotional guidance techniques. So before we get to the physical and I really pull everything together, we have the master mantras on one side. The emotional guidance techniques are very important because that, again, is sort of like the strings between the emotional and the physical. And the first one is visualization, which is a very important tool. And some of you may know what that is. Again, I'll use the kickball story. I'm going to visualize myself actually kicking the ball, maybe even hitting a home run, right? Kicking the ball, I run the bases, everyone applauds me. It's like a whole Rudy moment. That would be amazing. I'd love that. But that didn't happen. So instead, I can visualize something else. I can visualize who I am presently. I can, again, love that former version of myself and visualize myself going through a tough workout now, playing catch with my friends now. Visualization is a very important tool because it also is the way you create, again, real change. It makes you, again, empowered. It allows you to rewrite the past, but it also allows you to rewrite the future. So again, I know I said this earlier, but if I go into this presentation, oh man, they're not going to like me. They're not going to get anything I'm saying. It's going to be awful. Okay, then, I'm right. And it's going to be terrible. But if I visualize myself successful, if I visualize the crowd smiling, thank you. If I visualize, again, people applauding, That is an important, powerful tool because, again, then you're meeting the universe with the same frequency. The second is body empowerment. So I've worked with a lot of clients. I've been a personal trainer for 21 years, master trainer for 18 years. A lot of times clients will say to me, I don't want to work out, Shaun. Can we just talk? Or, when I was in person with people, can we just go to Starbucks? No, we're here to work out. Why? Because we're here to get healthy. Because if you can walk into this room, working out and exercise is not a chore. It's a gift. It's a privilege. My oldest client is 91 years old. My average client is 65. I've given plenty of seminars to seniors. It's so important for them to not fall. They care about having strength. Some of them don't have anybody to take care of them. So for them, they want to work out because they want to feel strong, to open a doorknob, to open a jar, to not fall, to walk down steps. They want to be resilient. When I say that to my clients who are in their teens or in their 20s, that's super eye-opening to them, right? So, I went out to party last night and maybe I'm hungover. I don't want to work out. Well, guess what's going to happen, right? When you're 60 or 70, your priorities are clearly going to change. Let's get ahead of it, right? Because if you're not working out, you're losing muscle. And if you're losing muscle, it's not just for aesthetics. Muscle has many functions in the body, even when it comes to metabolism, blood pressure, the list goes on. Owning your own emotions is number 3 here, which is really important. So I'll say to my girls, you can get angry. You're allowed to get angry. I'll be honest, anger is a very uncomfortable emotion for me. Still working on that one. But I'll say to them, you can get angry, you just can't hit. You can throw a sock, you can throw a stuffed animal, you can punch your pillow. But you can't hit mommy or daddy, which thankfully they don't, and you can't hit each other. But you can embrace your anger, you can go in your room and you can scream. It's so important. There are no bad emotions. None. None. But some of us, including, again, some strangers that I've met on my tour, will tell me I wasn't allowed to feel angry, Shaun. I wasn't allowed to feel that emotion. I wasn't allowed to feel sad. I actually had a stranger, and I'll keep her name private, said to me after a book signing, said to me, I wasn't allowed to feel happy. If I was happy and I applauded something, my mom would look at me like, don't you do that. Don't you do that. She would yell at me for being happy, if you can believe that. So there are no poor emotions. There are no bad emotions. Every emotion has its place. Emotional guide takes number 4 is your inner will. So my wife is here. She stepped out because she's got a cough today. But her name is Adrienne, and my favorite movie is Rocky. And that's just a crazy coincidence, isn't it? But it's my favorite movie for a couple reasons. And if you haven't seen the movie Rocky, it's sort of like lore. I'm sure we've all have seen it. But if you haven't, I don't mean to ruin this for anybody, but Rocky doesn't win. He doesn't win. Right? I mean, it's the most feel-good sports movie in the world, right? That's why I love it, because he's an underdog, just like I was, but he doesn't win. That's the genius of the writing. He doesn't win. What does he do then if he doesn't win? Well, he goes the distance. He faces Apollo. Apollo was, again, the prize fighter. He was like the Muhammad Ali in the movie. And Rocky goes the distance. It's the effort, not the outcome. So when I'm with a client and they do something they never thought they could do, yes, of course, I'm going to praise them. I'm going to give them affirmations. It's so important. But I'm going to praise the effort. I'm not going to praise that you did 50 push-ups in a row. That's amazing. It's the effort. It's going the distance. It's committing to yourself, especially when the odds are against you. The last emotional guidance technique is the mind-body connection. So as a reminder to everyone in this room, shout it proud, through Mount Everest, it's always going to be you versus you. It will always be you versus you. So I think about like the Wizard of Oz and my girls love Wicked, and you pull back the curtain, like, who is it? Well, it's not the counselor that called me the loser. It's me. It's me versus me. That's why it's so important, I said earlier in this presentation, to be your authentic self. Because it's you versus you. You have to heal yourself. You have to do the work. You, again, have to take your place in this world. And everybody here in this room is very unique to themselves, meaning you are all worthy of all of that. And so it's so important, again, to think about it as, okay, I have these master mantras. We went over those. I have these emotional guidance techniques. We are going to fuse them now together to create the physical. Okay? So just close your eyes again for me for a moment. I think it's really important for proprioception services. And you're thinking about, does visualization speak to you? Does the body empowerment speak to you? Does owning your own emotions speak to you? What about your inner will, aka Rocky? And then again, the mind-body connection. Just take a moment, please. Think about that before we tie things together. And you guys are doing a great job. Everyone's going to get A's on this quiz. I know it. So let's talk about the physical exercises now as you open your eyes. We have sitting and standing and walking, the upright plank, walking in place, and balance. These are all, again, very calm movements. These are gentle movements, but they're all very necessary. So I'm going to go through all of them with you for a moment. And again, if there's something that you're thinking about that I've said, hopefully something is resonating, something is hitting, I want you to think about one of the master mantras and the emotional guidance techniques that we've gone over. So hopefully everyone can see me. Feel free to stand if you can't. But sitting is something that all of us do. We're all doing it right now. And I'm looking at everyone's posture. I'm looking at the way everyone's sitting. And everyone's doing a great job. But let's make it a bit more optimal, right? So I used to live in Brooklyn for 20 years, and I would take the subway sometimes to see clients. And I would see these horrible guys who didn't get up even for pregnant women. There's a special place for them, by the way. And they would sit really wide and take up all this space. And I'd see this poor pregnant lady like just standing, like, come on, man. Like, get up and like sit for her. But the one thing this person did that was well is he took up space. And I think that's very important, to take up space, meaning that if you're working from home or you're in a hybrid position, or if you're just hanging out with your family, it's so important to sit with the correct posture and the correct kinetic alignment. Why? Because if we can't create stability, we have no business creating movement. Meaning that if I'm not stable in all the correct muscle groups when I'm standing or sitting or walking, we'll go over all that, I have no business doing a lunge or a push-up or anything else that's physical, because I'm going to compensate. All right? So what is the correct way to sit? Well, it starts again with the feet. So I'm about 5'11", but my legs are somewhat long, so I like a wider stance. When you sit a bit wider, you open up your hip flexors. The worst thing about sitting is, you might see these jokes, sitting is a new smoking, but the worst thing about sitting is that it narrows the spine. It causes your disc to herniate. It causes stenosis, which again is narrowing of the spine. It's very uncomfortable for the lower back. 99% of the time, by the way, when the lower back is really bothering you, it's not coming from the lower back. It's coming from your hip flexors or your psoas, or those two muscles create a muscle called the iliopsoas and the iliacus. Those muscles are in your lower back. But again, the root is not the lower back. The root, again, is the hip flexors. So how do you sit correctly? Well, as I said, we're going to sit wide. My feet are forward. My feet are domed. All four corners of my feet are domed. I know when I'm with a client and I'm pretty much remote these days, I do this. Well, that's not great, because I'm tightening up my calves. I'm tightening up a small muscle called the piriformis, which really creates sciatica over time. It's not great to sit this way. So we want to sit with our feet forward and my feet domed. Feet forward and feet domed. When you do that, now you're giving your hips a break. Now your hips are like, oh, thank God. I get a little break. That's nice. The next thing you want to look down is you want to make sure your hips are what? Aligned. Alignment is everything. I'm a left dominant person. It's really easy for me to go to my left, but my right has a lot to say. Meaning that if I create alignment, I'm not going to compensate. So again, feet are forward, heels are engaged, knees are out, hips are aligned. That is going to save you. And then here we are, typing away, texting away, right? Taking up space like those horrible guys on the subway. But this is really important. Okay, you'll save your hips that way, and then you create something called heel stability or leg drive, and your heels have lots of energy. They have lots of energy. So if you sit this way, it won't take so much effort walking. Okay? All right. So as we continue, the next one we have is standing. So posture breaks down after 2 minutes. So my girls are a little bit older now, but I find myself still washing bottles at the end of the night. I'm a lefty, and what happens? I start doing kind of, funky things where my feet rotate out, or I elevate my left, or my left goes to my right, and then the posture breaks down. There's something called kyphosis, which I'll show you guys from the side, which is this. Maybe we know somebody who does this, or lordosis, where my hips go back. All of that is correct posture, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're in the kinetic alignment. Kinetic alignment, again, is my feet, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, my head are all aligned. So I would like to stand like so, right? I don't have to excessively arch my back, but I'm standing almost at attention. Now, I don't expect everybody to stand like Frankenstein all day. That takes a lot of work and effort and energy. But the more you do it, the more you break those subconscious patterns. And then we talked about, again, emotion being stored in the subconscious. Emotion is stored in the cellular. It's stored in the body. So you can imagine if I'm standing like this, my posture is, again, proper and optimal, movement will just be easier. Okay? The next one we have is walking. So I don't walk a lot anymore. I live in Trumbull, so it's obviously a suburb now. But I used to walk all the time. And I walked to clients, and I would think about what Marianne said, and that was my therapist who wrote the foreword of this book. And I'd think, oh man, Marianne was really right. And I would walk down the street, or I think about Rocky. Oh, I'm feeling really good. I can't wait to work out. I'm thinking about Rocky, and all that is great. But walking is so therapeutic because it's actually the most therapeutic thing you could do for your body because it's also the safest form of movement. But we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So I mentioned the heels. This is so important. You may see people that do this, and maybe you do it, and there's no judgment. This external rotation is what they call it. External rotation. Why is that so bad? Because I'm tightening up the calves. I'm tightening up my calves. The calves are the one muscle group you use every day because you have to stand and you have to walk. They stabilize you incredibly. You have two calf muscles. You have the gastrocnemius, it's going to be a lot of Latin now, that sits, again, a little bit higher, and then you have the soleus that sits a little bit lower. All right, so I'll show you guys here as I put my foot on the chair for a moment. So here is the gastrocnemius, and here is the soleus. The reason why I'm spending time on the calves is because if I externally rotate my feet, and I'm walking towards somebody like so, I'm tightening up my calves, I'm compensating. So when I want to go into some balance work, a squat, a lunge, something that's lower body dominant, I'm not going to do well because my calves are taking over. And if you have one muscle group that's taking over, you have others that get weaker. That's how it works. It's a yin and yang of life. So if my calves get tight like this as I walk, my glutes get weaker, or my hamstrings get weaker, or my quads may get weaker. All right. So it's so important to stand, like we talked about with kinetic alignment, but it's so important to also walk with kinetic alignment. So the idea here is that I'm striking heel to ball. A lot of us are toe walkers. All right. I'm not trying to judge, but we want to make sure we use our heels because there's so much untapped energy in your heels. They're like your palms. They can take a beating. Okay? You have more tendons. You have 8,000 tendons in your body. You have 650 muscles in your body. Not a fair fight, right? 206 bones. So you have so many tendons, 650 muscles, 206 bones, 8,000 tendons. There are more tendons in the ball of your foot than your heel. But believe it or not, your heels have more energy. They're not going to be tapped out. The balls of your feet will be, especially when people walk upstairs and downstairs. Most of us strike again with the ball of the foot. So we can practice, right? There's no one here behind us, right? So I'll be your guide for a moment, but I'm going heel to ball, heel to ball, heel to ball, heel to ball, heel to ball. It's got a good rhythm, doesn't it? Heel to ball, heel to ball. But that's so important because now I'm not going to waste energy because there's so much energy, as I said, in my heels. So when it comes to our squats or anything else that's lower body dominant, I'll have the strength and energy to do it, okay? We have something called the upright plank, which I'm proud of that I've coined that term. I've written 2 other push-up books. I mentioned earlier that I'm a CEU provider where fitness professionals can read my book and they get credits that can be based also for their college experiences. The upright plank is really important because posture, is one of those things that, may look like, oh, is it compensated if I'm doing a push-up on the floor, if I'm doing a push-up against the wall, if I'm doing lunge, if I'm doing a squat? No, the optimal spine, the upright plank is with you throughout. There's no compensation, in other words. So let me take you through it. What is the upright plank? It does mimic, it's an isometric movement, and it does really mimic the plank. So I'll show you guys from the side because I think that's the best way to show you, and I'll show you with my right side. I'm going to stand with my feet together. When I stand with my feet together versus with my feet apart, this is much more core. This is much less core. My body doesn't have to work hard to stabilize me. But when I put my feet together, we're talking about these deep core muscles. You have 50 core muscles. The deepest one, meaning the most inner one, is called the transverse abdominis. It's the only core muscle in your body, fun fact now, that connects from the anterior to the posterior. Acts like a belt. So important. So I love my grandfather desperately. He died when he was 99, almost lived to 100. But he didn't work out. And when I went to visit him, he would grab his stomach and he would grab his lower back and he would get up like so. And it was hard for him to get up. That's because he didn't have a transverse abdominis. His transverse abdominis was very weak. So it's something that we don't have to do rigorous activity to engage. We can engage it right now. In fact, all of you can do it while you're sitting, which we're going to do in a moment. Okay, so let's go back to the upright plank. So for the upright plank, I'm keeping my feet together. I'm going to be soft on the knees. They call this soft on the knees, which just means the knees are slightly flexed, just slightly flexed like so. Feet are together, knees are slightly flexed. I'm going to bring my pelvis and I'm going to push it forward like so. I'm going to draw my navel in. Like I just ate a big meal and I got to go on the beach, right? We're going to suck it in. That's what I want everyone to do now. Suck it in. Draw your navel in, please. I say that again kindly. Then I'm also going to squeeze my glutes together. Your glutes are really important. They are really the engine in your body as well. If your glutes are weak, that can create most lower back problems, most hip problems. And the list goes on. Your glutes have many functions in the body. Their main function is hip extension. If I walk towards this chair, That's my glutes. If I can't, and I'm sort of compensating and I rotate out like so, now I'm using the big rectus femoris muscles. These are the quads muscles. Again, we cheat our glutes that way. We want to be balanced in the body, okay? So for the upright plank, I'm gonna have my feet together, my knees are soft, my pelvis is forward, I'm gonna roll my shoulders back, and I'm just gonna hold. I know that's a lot of steps, but this is really important because the upright plank can help with sitting and standing and walking, etc. I'll do it one more time for you guys. I'll show you this way. Feet are forward, knees are going to be soft, my hips are aligned, I'm pushing my pelvis forward, I'm squeezing my glutes, I'm drawing in my navel, I'm rolling back my shoulders, my neck is down, and I'm squeezing my scapula. Right? Those are all, again, the steps. All of that will become more natural the more we do it. Again, I know it's a lot of cues, but it does become second nature. Okay? The next one we have here is walking or marching in place, right? So we went over walking a little bit. The marching in place for me, I think, is a fun one in the sense of, let's say we're short on time. Let's say you're somebody and you work from home and you have a standing desk, right? You can do it standing. You can certainly do it sitting. I'll show you guys sitting and then we'll go over standing for a moment. So for the sitting marching in place, the goal here is that you're going to place your hands around your navel. So here's my navel. And I'm just going to bring my knees up like so. Believe it or not, this is a great core exercise. I'm drawing in my navel. Yeah, please feel free to do it as well. You're landing heel to ball, right? That's our old jingle. Heel to ball, heel to ball, heel to ball, heel to ball. And then we can do it standing, right? Just like so, just like so. Landing heel to ball, drawing in the navel, drawing in the navel. The last one we have is balance. So I mentioned if somebody externally rotates their feet out like so, your calves are going to be tight. Will that enable balance? Absolutely, right? Why is balance so important? Because nobody here in this room wants to fall. And balance is really tricky because you need the 5 major joints in your body to all work as one, like a family unit. So the major joints of the body, whether it be the shoulder joint, the hip joint, the knee joint, the ankle joint. And it's one of those things where if one of those joints are off, the whole thing is off. So for instance, I'm a lefty, so it's going to be easier for me to stand on my left foot. So if I stand on my left foot and I bring my right knee in like so, I'm not in that kinetic alignment like we talked about earlier. Remember, the kinetic alignment, shoulder, knee, foot, and hip all need to be aligned along with my head. So if I stand like this is compensating. I want to have my knee here, where it is aligned with, again, my foot, my knee, my hip, my shoulder, and my head are all aligned. So balance is so important, again, because nobody in this room wants to fall. And it's tricky. There's different forms of balance. I can be in something called the sagittal plane, which means if I were to walk to this chair and then walk back, that's the sagittal plane. Most of us live in the sagittal plane. And if anybody's ever watched football, American football, you may see a running back who grabs a ball, or maybe if you watch tennis, you may see a player go maybe side to side. This is called the frontal plane, which is really important because it becomes very glute dominant. Now we have something called the transverse or horizontal plane, which means, let's say I go to this gentleman here and I'm in this position versus pivoting and going towards this lovely lady here. That's the transverse plane. All those planes of motion matter, all those have their place, and I can do it with balance as well. So if I were to stay in the sagittal plane, this is the sagittal, this is the frontal, and this again is the transverse. All those certainly have their place. So how do we tie the emotion into it, right? So we're talking so much about, again, the atomical part of it, and we're going over form. But where does, again, the master mantras and the emotional guidance techniques, again, come in? Well, it's very unique and very subjective to you. I keep using, again, this analogy of my time when I was in camp with the kickball. But I'm a lefty. And another thing that happened to me that was, I think we all would agree was sad, is my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Donovan, prevented me from using my left hand. I was born in 1978. Wasn't like I was a warlock or a witch at that time, but I tried to use a left-handed scissor that was, again, in my kindergarten class, and she actually pulled my ear and said not to use it. True story. Yeah, she was pretty tough. So the reason why I bring that up is that's a wound. That's a wound. She's preventing me to be my authentic self. That's a 100% true story. So when I'm working out, it's important to think about that. Sure. Should it cause sadness or rage or pain? It might. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for it to leave your body. It's an opportunity to, again, create that mind-body connection, back to that emotional guidance technique. So if I were to stand here on one leg, and I'm thinking about Mrs. Donovan, and she didn't let me use that left-handed scissor, instead of feeling sorry for myself or creating pain, I can use visualization. I can use the master mantra to accept my path. I could use that I'm worthy, which she said was wrong. And that's a way for it to really leave my body, as a very quick, crude example. Okay? All right, you guys are doing great. I think everyone's going to get A's on this quiz. Oh, I'm sorry about that. The next part of emotional fitness are the physical exercises that become more advanced, which we'll go over. We have forearm planks. Some of these you may know. We have high and low shoulder planks. We have isometric squats. We have isometric split lunges. And then we have advanced strength exercises, push-up squats and split lunges, and adding equipment. So what is the difference between stability and strength? Right? What is different? Well, stability is you're still, I'm stable. And strength is the act of movement, right? If we just want to classify it and keep it like that. So I'll start with the squat for a moment, because squat is something that is so important because we all have to sit. We went over the proper way to sit, but what would an isometric squat be, right? Well, I think the first thing, if you're new, and I'll say if you're a beginner and if you're new to exercise, to help with your squats, you want to make sure that, again, that you are sitting properly. That we went over this before, but let's go over it again just to make sure we all feel good about it. My feet are forward. My feet are domed. My heels are engaged. My hips are aligned. My knees are out. Again, taking up space like those guys on the subway. My shoulders are back. My chest is upright. That is a great way to start and visualize in the squat. Now, if I use the mat here, because again, I'm somewhat tall and I prefer to do a wide stance. The wider you go, by the way, you're going to work more of the posterior chains. You're going to work more of your glutes and hamstrings. If I were to do a squat like so, they actually call this a sissy squat, but there's nothing really sissy about it. It's hard, but you're just predominantly working, again, the rectus femoris, those big quad muscles, okay? So I'm going to show you guys outside the mat. Again, my feet are forward. What to do with your arms? Well, if you're somebody who needs the balance, you can put them in front of you like you want to give yourself a hug, or you could cross your chest. That is fine. You can certainly talk. We're going to talk about adding equipment in a moment. But for the isometric portion, isometrics are fantastic. They do two things that strength can't do. One, they lower blood pressure just by holding that position. Amazing. And then second, they strengthen the tendons. I mentioned there's 8,000 tendons in your body. You want them strong. They connect to your muscles, okay? So my arms out are in front of me. I'm going to try to get to 90 degrees. I will say this is a bit of a controversial thing in my world where people are like, should you go to 90? Should you go lower? Should your butt touch the floor? I like personally 90 degrees. I think the range of motion is amazing to build muscle, which is called hypertrophy. At the same time, it's very kind to the joints, okay? So my arms are out in front of me. My knees are out. I'm sitting back on my heels, and I'm going to hold this position. I'll show you guys from the side for a moment, and I'm thinking about Mrs. Donovan or I'm thinking about kickball, but it's a way to get it out of my body. It's a way to not get stuck again in anxiety or depression. As I mentioned earlier in this presentation, they are distractions. If you're anxious about something, depressed about something, there's that OCD tape, or it could be something that's frivolous even. Maybe you're upset about somebody at work or a family member. It's not going to, again, heal you, all right? So again, feet are forward, knees are out. I'm gonna have my arms up so you guys can see my spine here. Chest is upright. I like to make a joke and say no secrets. And we're just holding. And I'm thinking again about something that's bothering me, and I'm allowing it to release it. Again, master mantra number 3, knowing that you are empowered. I'm empowered here. I don't need somebody to heal me. I don't need that apology. It's a waste. They can't do it anyway. Take back the power, okay? Now, I want to go over the planks and the push-ups for a moment. I'm going to flip my mat here. So I like to tell this story, you guys, because for me, it's one of my crowning achievements. So it was 2005 on my second year in personal training, and it was a workshop at Wall Street. So if anybody's ever been to Manhattan, picture where Wall Street is. And there was about 100 personal trainers in the course. And we were learning about push-ups. And I thought, this is going to be safe. And I'll admit at the time, I was still somewhat struggling with the kickball story, and I hadn't really created emotional fitness yet. And it was 2005. And we're all getting into the neutral spine position, which I'm going to go over what that is in a moment. And the instructor came over to me twice and said, get your hips up. And I thought I was doing it. I thought I was nailing it. And I clearly was not. And he stopped the class. And he said, everybody come over here. I want everybody to see this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like little Shaun's worst nightmare. And now it's becoming, again, it's like, this is like deja vu. And you had all those personal trainers who were all fit and all athletic, and they were looking at my spine and making comments about what they think I should do. And he was making comments. And it was like really traumatizing, right? So I left feeling pretty bad about myself. But just like in kickball, I made a promise to myself. And I said, not only am I going to, again, create the neutral spine during the push-up, but I will revolutionize a push-up. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to teach other personal trainers. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to totally flip it. So that night I went home, and I started researching everything I could about the push-up. And I realized that all the books that were published about push-ups, none of them centered around the core. They all centered around what you would think. You know, your biceps and your triceps and your chest. But nothing talked about the core. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to practice. And I'm going to work hard. And I'm going to put the effort in, hence Rocky. I'm proud to say that I've written 2 books. And like I said, I train other personal trainers with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So let me take you guys through, again, what it means to do a high and low plank first, okay? So we can do this against the wall. That would be easier for the core. We can do this against, let's say, the couch, if this desk here, all that would be easier. This is the hardest way to do it because I'm the most isolated. As I face the floor with my chest, that is going to be the most challenging. Muscles are very social. As I mentioned earlier, you have 650 muscles in the body. They like to work together. But when you come down to the floor, that's when they break apart, right? That's when they break apart. So I've coined something, and I say this humbly, called the mitten hands, which is this. You may see people do push-ups where they're I'll show you this direction so everyone can see, where their thumbs are maybe extended or flexed, and they're sort of like gripping the floor, and I like to call it like an air pocket. But it's very important to have everything flat. Why? Because if you can keep your palms flat, it's going to be easier for your wrists. It's going to be easier for your palms. It will certainly be easier for your deltoids, which are right here. You have 3, you have the anterior, the medial, and the posterior. But all that will be very, very helpful. We're able to connect these muscles to work well together. So I'm, again, somewhat wide on my shoulders, so I'm going to have my arms outside the mat in the mitten hand position. Feel free to stand up if you can't see it. We are going to have the feet together because we're all about the core. I'm tucking my tailbone like so. This is the concentric position. This is going all the way down for the eccentric. This is the concentric. This is the eccentric. Okay? And in that position, I'm thinking about what's bothering me or not. Maybe I'm having a great day. It doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. It still could be fun. But if there's something that is bothering me, it's another opportunity to feel the floor, feel grounded, pushing yourself again away from the floor to feel that you are empowered. So important. Let's go over the lunge, because the lunge can be done a couple different ways. It could be done where it's more quad dominant, which I'll show you guys, or it could be done where it's more glute dominant. Okay? And then we're going to wrap up soon. I'm happy to take some Q&A before we go today. So if I want to make this more thigh dominant, again, you have 4 quadricep muscles. The big one is called the rectus femoris. Again, there's going to be a quiz. I'm just trying to help. I would start this way, where my chest is upright. I like to call it charm school posture. Hands could be on the hips. We could cross our chest. And the goal here is 90 degrees. And I would just hold in that isometric position. And once more, I'm thinking about, again, something that was master mantra based or something that was with the emotional guidance technique. If I want to make it more glute dominant, I would lean forward and hinge forward like so. That's the difference. Not the stride length, not the width of the lunge. If I'm leaning forward like so, now it's more glute, now it's more hamstring, and here I go down into the lunge. Okay? What if I can't do that? What if that's hard? What if it's a balance issue? Then we can hold on to a chair. Okay? So I can bring this chair, flip it this way so I feel secure. And I could just, again, hold on like so. If I can't get to 90, that's fine too. I can be here with, again, the knee slightly flexed. I get this question a lot about range of motion, right? Range of motion. I can't do a push-up, Shaun. I can't go all the way down. Is it worth doing? Yes. Or I can't do a lunge. I can't do a squat. I can't go all the way down. Is it worth doing? Yes. And here's why. Because that's tendon stability. We talked about tendon stability. Again, 8,000 tendons. We talked about them connecting the muscles. You will be able to go lower. It just takes time. It takes, again, consistency. But just the act of being in that plane of motion or that act of doing that exercise is what really matters. All right, so let's not get hung up too much on that range of motion. The last thing I want to bring up before we wrap up is all of these are very subjective. So if you can do, and we'll go over forearm plank too before we go, but if you can do these stabilization exercises and you feel really good about them, that could be that you're holding anywhere between 20 and 60 seconds. Then I would say to you, okay, we can go into the push-up, we can go into the squat, we can go into adding equipment, all right? I want to go over the forearm plank, which I think is important. We talked about the upright plank. Everyone knows what it is now. Everyone's going to practice a lot when they get home. The forearm plank is the easiest in the sense of you're not on your hands. Your forearms are going to be on the mat, okay, like so. You may see somebody do this in a video, or maybe it's a group class, and they do something like this, and this is one of my pet peeves, because again, it robs, again, your non-dominant side stability. So if I'm a lefty and I get into the plank position like so, my left is going to take over. It would rob my right. All right? So let me show you guys the plank, and then I want to bring everything together, tie it all together. So I'll show you guys from the side. So I'm going to make sure, again, that my forearms are aligned with my shoulders, like so. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And then I'm going to have my feet, knees, and legs together. I'm tucking my tailbone, and I'm just going to hold. And I'm drawing in my navel. I'm squeezing my glutes for added bonus. Okay? That is, again, a very important, it's a basic movement. If that feels too difficult, we can do it standing like we went over with the upright plank. Now, I talked about a couple stories which I think are really important. They're vulnerable stories, but as I said earlier in this presentation, vulnerability, again, really leads to invincibility. I'm 47. I could have come into this presentation and not talked about kickball or mentioned Mrs. Donovan. No one would ever know. I mean, my wife would know, but no one else would know. And it wouldn't matter because I could talk about the present. But it matters to me in the sense of it wouldn't bring me to my authentic self. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go out and write on Facebook and social media or tell all your friends, oh my God, I had these horrible stories and everyone needs to hear it. But all I am saying is, if you're sitting here and you know somebody, or even if it's yourself and there's something you haven't addressed and you need to address, or you're afraid that if you admit something about yourself, that that side of you may not feel lovable, because that's really what it comes down to, right? I mean, especially when you're with somebody that you really care about, you may feel afraid to tell them something about yourself. Because why? Because you don't want them not to love you, right? That's what it's all about, right? Vulnerability, it's scary, because that's the side of you that's unlovable. But I really want you guys to understand that that's the opposite, especially if somebody really does care about you. Because those sides of you that feel really dark and painful and raw and, again, just not something that feels conditional, those are the very parts of ourselves that we need to embrace always to get to your authentic self. All right? So I would like you guys to close your eyes one last time today before we wrap up, and then I'm going to go over the grand finale. And I want you to think about, maybe it's something that happened to you when you were 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 9 or 10. I have all of these very gentle and kind challenges in emotional fitness. My favorite challenge in emotional fitness, I call it the emotional freedom letter. And you're writing a letter to your former self. So if you could think about a time in your life where you needed, again, that unconditional love, you needed a friend, you needed yourself more than ever. Could you think about a time in your life, maybe you were 8, maybe you were 10, maybe it was yesterday, what would you say to yourself? How could you help yourself? What is something that you needed from yourself that you didn't get then, or that you didn't get from a parent, or a teacher, or a counselor? So please take a moment and think about what you would say to yourself now. Whatever age you are now, what would you say to that person that needed it then? You guys can open your eyes. It's really tough work. So let's really bring it all together. Let's bring it home. I'll use a squat because I think it's visually a really good one. So I mentioned the kickball story. It's how I started. I've talked about it a lot. Again, I don't remember the counselor's name. All I remember is they called me a loser. So this is what true emotional fitness looks like, right? I'm going to get into the squat position. I'm going to think about my 11-year-old self. I'm going to picture myself not laughing like all the other kids did, but saying, you were wrong. You shouldn't have called me a loser. I'm not a loser. Arms are out. I'm feeling empowered. I'm thinking about master number 3. I'm empowered. Or maybe even master mantra number 2. I am worthy. And I'm going down into the squat, and then I'm rising up, feeling my hips, feeling my glutes. I'm down for a count of maybe 1, 2, 3, thinking about, again, that counselor, but also, again, embracing that the fear that I had, the fear, the shame, all those uncomfortable emotions that happened to me when I was 11 years old, it didn't break me. I am the last person that should be up here, right? Can't even kick a ball if I believe it. Or I can believe my script. I can believe my path. I can believe who I'm supposed to be. And that's, again, what brought me to you guys here. That authenticity. Not, again, what somebody said about me, what I think of myself. I had that opportunity to heal myself, and everyone in this room can do the same. Thank you guys so much. I'm Shaun Zetlin, and I wish you guys your best emotional and physical health. Thank you guys so much.